All right, guys, welcome. This is Prisoners of Truth podcast. Welcome Monday afternoon. I hope you're doing well. You made it through another week, and now you get to listen to us ramble. So welcome. We're happy to have you. We've got Tommy today. We've got Samo as always, and myself. And I believe what we're going to do today is a little bit of a general discussion about all of our political dispositions and opinions, and see kind of where we line up with each other. I have a feeling we're going to be pretty close, but we won't spend too much time on that. We're also going to do a little bit of time talking about corporate censorship and giving just kind of our different views on what that means, what it looks like, what's wrong with it. And we're also going to do a little bit about NPC culture and tell you what we think about NPCs on both sides. So there you have it.
All right. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about this Clinton business going on. I mean, there's always something happening. But it seems like there are some developments going on regarding the investigation, I guess you would call it.
Well, yeah, the biggest thing that happened last week was there's these two basically financial bounty hunters. You hear them talked about as whistleblowers. Technically, what they're doing falls under the whistleblower statute at the IRS. It's not that they worked for the Clinton Foundation or anything. They're basically just forensic accountants, numbers nerds, and not to belittle them, but they're attacking and suing based on the fact that the Clinton Foundation was operating well outside the bounds of their 501 3C or C3 or however you say that, basically well outside their charitable articles of incorporation, well outside of the tax structure that they were operating under. So for their purposes, they aren't actually going to be getting the Clintons on anything criminal as far as sending them to jail. But what it does do is it keeps us talking about the Clintons. It keeps them in the forefront of everybody's mind as criminals, and they could be liable for a lot of money. I think there was like something 200 million possibly that they were liable for in taxes that they didn't pay. So that's what's going on with them, and I'm hopeful that will lead to some financial repercussions for them. But I think the day that we see real criminals perp walked is not here yet.
Yeah, yep, for sure. And it's quite a shock. I mean, I thought her charitable trust was all about feeding the hungry and, helping orphans and all that. This is very shocking news. I'm very disappointed. I don't know where I've been. I just would not think of the Clintons to be involved in something like that.
Of course, because we all know the Clintons as the perfect little ornament angels that you hang on your Christmas trees.
Yes,
every year.
Exactly.
That's a weird metaphor. Analogy.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so nothing too crazy going on with them, but we can. Here I am with my fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's business as usual. I mean, I'm not like in the lock her up camp because I just don't think it's actually going to happen. And it's interesting whenever high profile individuals are caught up in these cases. It just seems like it always just seems kind of like political theater. I've never really seen anybody really get busted for their war crimes. I mean, fucking like Henry Kissinger is still walking around, So I don't know if anything like that crazy is going to happen, but it sure would be interesting. I don't even think anybody would
have equal justice under the law.
It would be nice to have that, but even if like something happened to the Clintons, most Americans, Democrat, Republican, the Republicans, they'd be happy, but like left-leaning individuals, like I don't even think they care about Hillary Clinton anymore. So.
Well, yeah, Democratic Party definitely left her behind.
They care definitely because first of all, Hillary Clinton is a woman. That's why they care.
Oh, she's a woman, yes.
Yeah, and she's the nemesis of Donald Trump. That's why they care. Do they care about Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton as a person? Fuck no.
No, of course not. Yeah,
they don't give a shit.
No, and
they care about the idea, the concept of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and it is key that she's a woman. That's a big deal. Yeah, like, and that's really apparent. Like, you look at like the Kavanaugh situation and like all the women that were kind of accusing him of all these things, even Stormy Daniels, right? The left, they really loved the idea of these people that were gonna, take down their enemies. But once it's all said and done and these people's lives are destroyed, they're just kind of like, fuck them. Like, it's over, Like,
yeah, totally. Nothing but tools.
Yeah, it was absolutely obvious that as soon as, I mean, people specifically on the right talked about this, that as soon as Kavanaugh would be back when this was all still going on, as soon as Kavanaugh is going to be sworn in, confirmed,
yes,
confirmed, all this stuff is just going to be irrelevant. We tried it. It's not going to happen, and it's just going to go up in smoke, and no one's going to talk about it anymore. They move on to the next target.
Exactly.
It's very cynical.
Yep.
I'm actually very surprised that they are reopening the case with Hillary Clinton, because I thought that at the point that 2 years ago Trump said when he was elected that he's not gonna. He campaigned on lock her up. Yeah, and one of the first things he did after getting elected was coming out and saying, we're not going to do anything about Clinton. Just forget about it. And I thought that at this point, the Clintons would just disappear. This is just, no one's going to talk about the Clintons anymore. They are going to go their way, and politics is going to go another way, and the email stuff is never going to come up again. So that, I don't really know. Does Trump have any sway in this? Probably not. This is probably
no, and he really shouldn't. I mean, and to address your point, I mean, he never really ran on locking her up. He never said those words.
He did. He literally said, "Lock her up." This was the people were chanting this shit.
People said it. He never said it. Well, he said during the interview, during a debate at one point, was, if I get elected, I will appoint a special prosecutor to look into your stuff, which he never did or hasn't done yet. But look, there are things happening as far as the Clintons are concerned. The world has definitely not just forgotten about them. I mean, Jeff Sessions appointed a gentleman named John Huber, who's Attorney General in Utah, to open a probe into the Clinton Foundation and possible criminal pay-for-play stuff. And that's going on still, and yeah, so it's definitely kind of touchy, I guess, for like Donald Trump as a politician. I don't particularly give a fuck what's touchy for him. I want criminals to go to prison. You know what I mean? But I do get that, like, it can very easily look like, oh, Donald Trump, the big meanie, he's just going after Hillary Clinton. That's not the case, but that's the spin that'll get put on it. And like you asked, Tommy, like, does he have too much to do with it? No, and he shouldn't have much to do with it. He's the president. He's not a prosecutor. You know what I mean? We need prosecutors and people who actually prosecute crimes to go through and deal with this. We don't need the president to do that. We've got people to do that. Hopefully he can help, and his Justice Department can get it done. But, who really knows?
Yeah. Yep. And I did a little search. So I guess Trump never specifically chanted "lock her up" like the crowd did. He, of course, kind of sparked it a little bit. I'm sure, I'm sure Trump would like to see her get locked up too. But obviously, as somebody who's a constitutionalist, he probably would rather just leave it up to, departments and investigators and stuff like that to go after it. It's not really his job to go after his own political enemies, so to speak.
For sure. Did you guys want to go through real quick before we get into the corporate censorship stuff, which will probably be the deepest? I mean, that's really deep. Did you want to get into just basic political ideology real quick?
Oh yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I'll start out, kind of give us a little bit of a structure. Hi, my name is Sean. No. I consider myself to be somebody who is just a small government person. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I'm not, I don't go that far, but I do think that the role of government. I feel like if you make the role of government the number one thing, very first thing in their charter to be to restrict themselves and other forms of government, I think that goes a long way to helping tyranny. So beyond that, I just think that free markets are good, and I think that part of that government's obligation would be to regulate massive corporations so that they don't abuse the free market. Trusts and monopolies are inherently anti-free market. So, and I think we get in the weeds a lot with that with modern culture. People say, oh, well, look, America's a free market capitalist society. Look how bad they have it. Look how abusive corporations are. Well, we have several major monopolies and trusts. So the free market is not necessarily in full swing.
America is not really free market society.
No, it's not at all. And so I get frustrated with that sometimes. But yeah, so I think a government whose goal is literally one of their main goals should be to restrict themselves in operation, and then the secondary main goal would be to ensure that a free market exists as much as possible. And I think in this way you can abuse people at a minimum, but then you still have all the good things that society brings, like a police force and fire department and all that stuff, because I don't think the anarchy is a very solid structure.
Yeah,
but I do understand government as something that needs to be restrained at an extreme degree. So that's pretty much me.
Yeah, my views, I don't know. I'm sort of a left-leaning centrist, sort of on the libertarian side. I just really want to see, I don't know, like, it's weird. I feel like, I wouldn't say I'm low information or whatever, but I kind of go with more of my gut feelings on things. And so for me, I just kind of want to promote an environment that's going to help this country, I guess, improve, kind of give us an opportunity to accomplish further goals. I don't want to burn the whole thing down. And so I don't know. I would sort of in a way consider myself an economic nationalist. I'm a fiscal conservative, all of these things. I think I'm a little bit more extreme on Twitter because it's kind of fun to put on the nationalist cape, if you will, to do a little LARP to get under people's skins. But basically, yeah, that's the way I kind of see my views. I just want everything to be fair. I don't want us to be this country to be run by complete psychopaths or warmongers. And Trump definitely, the thing I respected about him is when he started ramping down the wars. That was my barometer. Like, my last thing I want to say, I thought to myself, if I see him accelerating wars and us getting involved in other conflicts, that's when I was going to kind of turn my back to that movement. But when I saw that he was, anti-war, that was a pretty good signal for me.
Yeah. I think it's called eclecticism, which is when you pick when you look at different ideologies, or especially in arts. This word comes from art, but you can do it with ideologies as well. When you pick different things from different ideologies, if you're not, there are the I'm a conservative and everything I am is conservative, and I am liberal and everything I am is liberal. This is bullshit in my opinion. You got to look at different things and pick what you think would make the most sense. And I'm basically 90% libertarian and 10% communist. What I would like to see, what I think is would work best is a base of universal basic income. You can get rid of public schools, which are at this point basically just government indoctrination units. You can have within the universal basic income, you could have a system like school vouchers, probably most effectively if you do it all with cryptocurrencies. On top of that, basically more or less unregulated capitalism, which means you have some basic regulations where they are absolutely necessary. For example, do not fish the oceans empty. You can't bury a nuclear waste somewhere in your backyard. Shit that actually matters.
Yeah.
And this combined with a sales tax as the only tax that exists, no direct income tax, etc. Through the universal basic income combined with the sales tax, you have an effective progressive income tax, outcome tax, more or less, because your basic income stays the same. But if your additional income that you earn on a free market, the further it goes up, the higher your tax rate, your actual effective tax rate would be to the nominal tax rate. Your tax rate graph would look like a logarithm curve. That's basically it. Everything else, I'm not in favor of dual citizenship. I'm not in favor of the universal basic income, of course, can only apply to citizens. That way you automatically regulate immigration, because you can get rid of basically all labor laws and protection for workers, etc. Because you have the universal basic income, which means the argument that the left constantly, which I did back at the time myself, brings up, is that you have to work in order to be able to provide for your life in order to survive. Therefore, the companies can do what is it called? Loan dumping? No. Yeah, when they don't pay you enough. It doesn't matter. And you don't have this anymore in this system because you have universal basic income, which means you have complete freedom to negotiate your employment contracts anywhere you like, and you cannot make the argument that you are forced to work. I think also that with the system, the actual income on the free market that you have would go down a little bit, which would be compensated through the universal basic income, which means your salary would go down probably a little bit, which would deter immigration for the most part, because these low-paying jobs that you cannot survive on now, that the immigrants do now mostly, you could negotiate better as a worker. You could negotiate better salaries. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you have to have strong laws regarding who, making sure that company is actually hired inside the country. I think it's an interesting idea. I don't fully disagree with the concept of a universal basic income. I don't see it as effective, let me say that in a perfect world, I don't see it as something that I would necessarily think we would need. But I think as an argument to help stem off poverty, it can be made. I personally think that any system that can provide a universal income is going to be big enough to be easily corruptible. But I mean, the basic concept itself is interesting. I think like you were pointing out, it certainly solves a lot of interesting problems. I mean, it creates its own set, but it solves a lot of the problems you hear people complain about.
Yeah, the thing with the universal basic income is you can, if you have a universal basic income, you can get rid of so many different government programs. You can fire so many government employees. You can basically thin out the whole government. You replace the whole government social system with something that basically does not need any oversight, because it's
Yeah, direct subsidies. I appreciate that. I mean, look, I agree with that sentiment when it comes to other things that the government does. Like, I would rather them, like, I hear people complain about healthcare all the time, and my big problem with healthcare is just I don't want the government to control the healthcare system. Like, if your argument is that people need help paying for healthcare, I'm not going to argue with you. Like, I don't think that's not something to argue about. Look, that's fine. I think if anything, the government should directly subsidize that help, because when the government gets involved, shit gets bad. So if you like you said with the universal income, you bypass a lot of the shitty bureaucracy in a perfect case that you're talking about, by just directly subsidizing people's lives.
Yeah, I think giving people money and expecting them to, I mean, in an optimal world, of course, you shouldn't have to give anyone money.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents in your school system should have turned you into an responsible adult who can take care of themselves, but that's not the world we live in. The getting basically an allowance, a specific amount of money that you can then use however you want, is to a certain point, again, in my opinion, beneficial to your personal responsibility, because you have to learn how to handle money, because if you spend it all on weed, then you don't have any food, and at this point the government is not going to come in and give you more handouts. It's just, that's your problem now.
That sounds like a big problem, buying only weed, smoking all that, and having no food to eat. That would be pretty bad. But
that's, I mean,
but it teaches you, right. I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
You hopefully only do this in the first month.
Yeah, hopefully. And I mean, that's a big deal, because I remember when I turned 21 and I, had control over my bank accounts and all that, you start paying bills and everything. Your whole concept on money, completely changes. So, yeah, I think that would be an interesting thing, because say if you're somebody who's grew up in abject like poverty, you have nothing, you don't really have the opportunities to enter into an economic sort of, I guess, a partnership with your government. And so what that could do is that's like, money in the hands of, everybody is going to teach people to be more responsible, or at least what it means to participate in an economic system. And, I believe Jordan Peterson was talking about universal basic income on one of the episodes of Joe Rogan that he was on. And he basically was saying that he's not really happy about the concepts. He's not happy about, the fact that we're going to need it in the future. But he said it is a fact that we are going to need universal basic income. And it only makes sense to, it makes sense when you really think about it, when you're thinking about eliminating poverty. And also it's going to take people's excuse, away. People like to blame when they don't have enough. And it's like, yeah, they can't really go on strike or get pissed off about what their wage is, because like at least you have enough to sustain yourself at the base level.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I wouldn't hate it if it was like, if you're talking about a modern implementation of it, the only way I'm going to be okay with it is if you say, all right, look, we're cutting literally all welfare. We're going to spend less money. It's going to be less tax, less money. We're going to lower your taxes. We're not going to spend the taxes that we're not going to take the money we save and spend it on something else. We're literally going to give you a tax break, and here's your universal basic income. And I also think that you said as far as like working in the free market, like to me, I feel like instead of paying taxes up to a certain point on money that you've made in the free market, you could just give up a portion of your monthly free money, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then, eventually, your tax rate just gets to a point where it's caps out at a certain level, like, 15, 20% or whatever, which is still pretty high. But But yeah, I don't see it as something to put on top of a giant welfare state, like which I think is the argument.
That's not the point.
Yeah, which is the argument that you get from the modern left on this right now. Is like, we need everything we have right now, and we also need, universal income. And it's like, okay, so you just want to break the system, or you don't understand how these systems work.
Yeah, they just want. Even more taxes, even more government employees, even more bureaucracy. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so if universal income could be implemented in a way that lessens government bureaucracy, that lessens the way that government spends money, I'd be all for it. I think it is important to add that, though, because you hear almost anybody talking about universal income these days. It's not, you don't hear that. You hear we need it now, and we need it on top of everything we already have. But yeah, I think the concept itself is interesting, and I think a lot of people on the right don't give it enough credence because they hear it and they immediately go, "Oh, socialism," and it's like, well, it's social spending, but you're never going to get rid of social spending. You're always going to have something the government needs to spend money on. The idea is to minimize it and to make it the best possible. Unless you want to live in it.
This is the one of the right-wing NPC talking points, specifically on the libertarian side of the right spectrum. When they read or hear the term universal basic income or something similar, it always goes back to, "Oh yeah, you're a communist." They don't give a shit about any other point you have, any other views you have. They don't give a shit about your political. Your broad political view in general. Just the one fact that you are pro universal basic income makes you a communist. Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's important to point it out wherever it is. It's not a partisan thing. Like, people get totally caught up in their own way of thinking without. I mean, I think it's why we call them NPCs, right? Is because they aren't thinking; they're just acting. That's the whole point. An NPC in a video game doesn't think or have any of its own independent, movement or thoughts. So it's 100% not partisan. And there's NPCs of all stripes and colors. And if you've got somebody telling you carte blanche, no matter what, if you think universal basic income is a thing that should be thought about or talked about, you are Che Guevara. You know what I mean? You are Mao Zedong. Like, I think it's a profound lack of nuance that these people have.
Yeah, I had on BitChute, I had a discussion more or less in the comments with a few anarcho-capitalists, and one of them basically said something like, "What, you're not an anarchist? I don't get it. Do you want to live? Why do you deify the fucking government? Why do you deify the state? Why do you think that you need the state? Do you want to live in Orwell's 1984? Because this is apparently the two possibilities that you have. You can either be an anarchist, or you can love the fucking government, as if there's no fucking gray area in between."
Right. Yeah, it's a very, very strong lack of nuance, and on the left, it's like it's like, President Trump is bad no matter what he does. He can't do anything good. If I hear him, it's to the point on the left where, like, you could tell them that Donald Trump did something that they would have agreed with yesterday, and they're like, "No, I hate that now," and it's like. It's just another form of not thinking, or maybe that's not truly accurate. Maybe it's thinking up to a point and then giving up thinking. It's like you thought yourself here, right? On both sides, however you got there, you thought yourself into being an anarchist. You thought yourself into being, a liberal or whatever, and then you just slammed the doors shut. And like there's no more possibility that you could ever be wrong or take in different information because why? Because you're always right. Because, like, I don't understand. Like, I feel like people, when you get to a certain point, you should have been knocked down in the dirt enough in your life to know that you aren't all powerful or perfect and you make mistakes. And I just don't understand the dogmatic, drooling at the mouth, feverish sort of loyalty that people have to these ideologies.
Yeah, I sort of get where they're coming from. First of all, no one likes to be wrong, and the further you are away, I mean, I think now that I am right, and I thought 2 years ago that I was right back then, and I would laugh at myself if I would see myself 2 years ago now. You always, of course, think that you are right, because if you wouldn't be right, you wouldn't have the opinion that you have. You would, if you know that you are wrong, you would just change your opinion. And specifically when you spend like the first 20, 30 years of your life believing something, here we are with the dogma, with the, basically it's almost a religion, believing in a certain set of politics, and coming to terms with the fact that, first of all, everyone lied to you your entire life, or everyone just repeated lies without knowing any better. You repeating the same lies without knowing any better, coming to terms with this is can be complicated. Living the lie is easier. This is where the cognitive dissonance comes in. I think that a lot of these people have. That's why they're all angry all the time and have to break shit. It's because they are eaten up by cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've had a lot of humbling experiences in life that like have allowed me to be able to sort of laugh at myself and not take myself too seriously. But yeah, it is a really scary feat when you're kind of standing on the edge where you're like, you're realizing that maybe you don't have it all figured out. It's like a really painful mental exercise to think about abandoning the things that you were wrong about and then going out and exploring to see, what else is out there to better inform yourself. I've mentioned it before. It's a very much like the allegory of the cave. It's that light when you finally leave, that light is kind of blinding and scary. But, it would do you well to go through that hurdle and kind of figure it all out. And, to me, it's interesting how a lot of people do get really dogmatic and they kind of hang on to these ideals that we've already kind of tried before. To me, I kind of I view myself as more of a futurist in a way, like talking about universal basic income. I think that might be something we're going to have to face in the future. And I just want to kind of promote discussions that are going to allow us to be forward thinking. And, cause I don't want to just keep hanging on to those things. It's time for us to kind of develop and add on to some of the concepts that we kind of hold to. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about. I think rejecting dogma is important. I think that entails. It sounds really simple and easy, but it's a kind of. It's a little bit more difficult when you realize that the propaganda and the vast majority of the people that you're going to run into are in some way going to be holding on to some sort of structure that is not necessarily healthy or correct as far as their political thinking. And I think for me, it's a lot about understanding that, people should be allowed to have that. You can't really restrict people from being wrong without being authoritarian and totalitarian in nature. There has to be a certain level of people coming to these conclusions on their own, and I think it's a concept that everybody understands when you put it in a 2 or 3 word cliche and talk about horses and drinking water. But when it comes to setting up structures of governments, everybody just everybody suddenly just forgets, and they think that, oh, because I'm right and because I think this way, then everybody's just gonna see it this way, and everybody's gonna see it the way that I see it because I'm right, and then you know, at some extent everybody thinks that, and bumping up against that, you have to ask yourself questions, because at some point you're gonna experience somebody who is challenging your beliefs, and it's just about having the right mentality when that comes around. Because man, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, if you're gonna be combative with somebody over that instead of wanting to have a discussion, you're never gonna get to where, you know, you have a better understanding of people.
Yeah, or you just call them Nazi.
Yeah, or
that's a good
or
one.
you
Yeah, that's
do
good.
that.
that's right. Or you works.
Works every time.
Works
It works every time. But you know what confuses me is that like they call people who aren't Nazis Nazis, and then the actual Nazis don't want to be called a Nazi. It's like, I don't understand. Like, the reason I don't want to be called a Nazi is not because I don't want other people to think I'm a Nazi, but I secretly am. The reason I don't want to be called a Nazi is because I'm not a fucking Nazi socialist left-wing person. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand.
I mean, these people who call themselves liberals are not liberal, and actual people who are liberal in the dictionary sense of the word liberal write things like liberalism is a mental disorder. Nothing makes any sense anymore. This is, I think this is something that I realized before I watched the Yuri Bezmenov interview. This is something that his interview confirmed for me, which is he talked about basically fucking everything up to a point where no one is able to make any sense of anything anymore. Everything is contradictory. Nothing makes any sense anymore. Definitions don't matter anymore. This is something that I realized before I watched that interview, that the left is doing that words don't mean anything anymore. Well, definitions don't mean anything anymore.
I mean, everything is in a constant flux. Like, things are changing constantly since we're more in the digital world. I almost look at it like when we look at terminology and we apply it to current events, it's very similar to looking at like financial markets. You know, like everything, you know, you never know what's going to happen from day to day. Those markets are always changing. And to me, I feel like that's kind of what's going on politically. Maybe a lot of these definitions don't really mean anything anymore. And I'm also wondering, us like as an interconnected being, us connecting to the hive mind of the internet, I'm wondering if we're in the process of creating new types of terminology for the future. Because, like, you know, like when they say we've gone through a paradigm shift, I mean, that's a really big deal. It's like we're moving forward into the future. We're participating in history right now. And so, you know, maybe we're going to have next 50 years from now, we're going to have completely new terms regarding political discourse that are more aligned to where reality is now.
Yeah, I mean, if we move to a sane place, then we will. If we move to a more sane place in 50 years, then I think you're right. Because look, I mean, things are kind of like they're in flux, and they are backwards, bizarro, clown world stuff going on right now, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely hope that in 50 years from now, the political terms left and right are history. This is these two terms are, first of all, they are absolutely poisonous. Everything, every side looks at the other side in terms of these left-right terminologies, and just seeing enemies everywhere. And taking the political spectrum that exists and all the different kinds of political viewpoints and positions and basically splitting them up into two camps and two worlds and two sides makes no sense. This is so.
Yeah, it's almost abusive in the way that it controls how, like, if you aren't really thinking about the structure of your thought, it can control a lot of how you feel and think about, you know, political structures in general, because it totally is very reductive, and it totally takes the spectrum of political idea and thought And even if it's not just left, right, whatever you want to call it, if you take something that complicated and that tied to the human condition and you scrunch it down into a line where you are like you're totally right when you say that, Tommy. Like, it makes no sense. Like a line with two sides that are opposite, like it does not represent politics, and it doesn't represent, you know, the way that people think about things in a way that's realistic. And it's a little bit Orwellian in the newspeak thing, because it is very true that if you control the way and how people speak and communicate these ideas, then you control the way that they think about it. I mean, you put them in a box that they can't. You literally have to have somebody come and explain it to you, or you have to create, you know, an entire structure that co-aligns with reality on your own, which is something that not everybody can do. And yeah, if you reduce political debate for an entire world, it's not even the country at this point, it's the whole fucking world that's gone crazy with this shit. And of course you're going to get not only abusive structures, but people who hate each other for no reason. When if they sat down together, I guarantee you, I could sit down with the craziest boot-licking Nazi and the biggest Maoist out there, and if I actually got into what they want to see in the world and talk to them, and if we actually got, there's going to be common ground. Not only between me and both of those people, but between both of those people, because it's not that simple.
Yeah, this is finding someone who is completely different in his viewpoints as oneself. Finding two people in general that have nothing in common whatsoever about the way they view the world and the way they think government should be run, etc., etc. That is really hard.
Yeah, there's always overlap.
Yeah, and yeah, the left-right terminology is basically a very simple form of divide and conquer. You split the population right down the middle. You have two camps artificially created that hate each other for no reason.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that might be to a certain extent like the whole point of it, when you're gonna get into like spooky conspiracies, talking about like the elite or people that are sort of in control, or the people I would say were in control. And you know, I think that, you know, a lot of people at the top that are tyrannical, elitists, assholes, whatever you want to call it, you know, their biggest fear are the little guy getting together and fighting for you know, a better day. And that's what I'm hoping for. Like, and that's the thing. That's why it's so important not to like look at your viewpoint like as if it's this religion. You don't want to get so dogmatic, because it really walls you off from making that common ground that like Sean was kind of saying that he believes that he could find. And I've had conversations with certain friends of mine who are very dogmatic and closed-minded, and it's unfortunate, because it's like you think about like the one hurdle. And the first hurdle is, I disagree with you, you're wrong, here's why. Like, it's such a hurdle for that person to accept it. But it's like, if you can face that, like, that's really going to create a better environment in a better world. And I mean, I think people are becoming a bit more open-minded, I hope. But yeah,
my German teacher said, yeah, he was pretty good at analyzing speeches, how the way is a speech that someone gives is structured, and what specific elements in the speech do, how they basically what they make you feel, more or less. And he said that it is it is extremely effective if when you start a conversation with someone that you don't agree with, that you don't even like necessarily, and you start it off by finding something that you both can agree on, getting him to say, yeah, I agree with that. That is, and I can see why that is, because it kind of, I think, lowers your mental defense mechanisms a little bit, because you stop seeing the opponent as the enemy.
Yeah, even within yourself. I mean, you can get the other person to agree with you and all that, but you do have to start at a point where you're expecting them to be, if that makes sense. Like, so agreeing with somebody is incredibly powerful, because, especially in the beginning, because you are coming from a place that you at least both understand each other's thought processes. And I think if you can't make that connection, you do get a lot of this like team A, team B mentality that it just becomes very difficult for people to mix, because they literally don't understand how the other person's thinking. Like I think Tommy said, it's a little bit more difficult on the liberal side. Like last stream or whatever, you were talking about how, conservatives tend to understand liberals more, and liberals tend to not understand the way that conservatives think. But I think at the base of it, if you can just try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them on everything. It just means that you can bring a conversation to a point where something productive might happen.
Yeah. And that is not really possible if you think you know everything. Talking to someone who is above any sort of failure and above any sort of not knowing something is impossible.
Absolutely. Egos are definitely make everything a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I've seen a nice graph lately about the political compass, which had the y-axis, so the authoritarian libertarian was ego, and the x-axis left right was IQ. So left-wing authoritarians are all ego and no brain, and anarcho-capitalists have no ego and lots of brain. And I sort of agree with this, actually. This makes a lot of sense.
It does. That's funny. That's an interesting take on the political graph.
Yeah, I'm all for balance when it comes to looking at those metrics, for sure. You don't want to be too far to like one side or the other.
I think it's okay to be on the like just all the way on the full side of libertarianism, just above the line. It's funny. I actually fall like -5, so like right in the middle of the right bottom quadrant of the libertarian right.
One, I believe.
Yeah. So like it's weird. I've taken it a couple times. I do almost fall like straight in the middle of libertarianism, but to me it doesn't really matter. I just want to see less government abuse in the world, and like I want to see governments constrained as much as possible.
I'm starting to doubt my faith in the universal basic income, purely for the fact that it's mostly leftists who are in favor of it. The fact that the left is in favor of it makes me think, yeah, but okay, this is weird, since usually the stuff that leftists want is garbage.
Yeah, well, to me, it's like if done correctly in an ideal way, it's not the most abusive thing in the world. But like, I think the modern world, when at it, if you just add in universal basic income, it's gonna fuck a lot of shit up, and it's also really, really expensive. And there's a lot of reasons to not want to do it, but at least for me, but it's a lot like government spending in general when it comes to me, because I hear people all the time, idiots, say, "Oh, but you're a socialist. You want the government to pay for the police and the jails and the not the ambulance, but the firefighters and all that, 911." And it's like if you don't understand the difference between social government control of an economy and social spending, then I can't help you. You're just coming from a spot where you don't understand fully what you're talking about, because social spending is something I'm okay with. And like I think especially when it comes to like America as an example, if we controlled what we spent our money on, as far as social pay, and controlled the graft, we could have the best shit in the world for people. It would almost feel like a socialist utopia, but it would be cheaper because in a lot of ways we waste a lot of money. And if you constrain it to a couple of things like universal basic income and letting you go to the hospital, and basically like that's about it. It essentially, these things can be good and be very, very positive. But like Stefan Molyneux says, like you look at a little bit of social spending being good and a little bit of social, action as far as money goes and helping people out. And then these people, they want to go full bore. It's like, no, you can't. Don't do that. You're going to ruin everything. Like it only works when it's very, very, very constrained. And I don't know if you're concerned about like your thoughts over universal basic, I would just maybe think like, why do you think that? Because if you think that it would be, if you're more nuanced about it, like the way we've been talking about it, then I don't think it's anything to get worried about agreeing with the left over, because you don't agree with the left if that's the case. Because they want it all, and part of that includes universal basic income. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's Man, this is the next topic for a video that I'm hopefully sometime gonna make myself. There's a party in Germany, political party. It's a mini party, very small. Doesn't have any seats in any parliament. It's called the Party of Humanists, the Humanist Party. Yeah, as you can probably tell by the name, this is left wing. Target audience mostly atheists, so it's the atheist people's party basically. And this is like if you read their concept, this is just wishful thinking. This is everyone is it's hard to explain. At the very core of this party are very good ideas, but then they took this core and they smeared 5 inches thick communism on top of it. I'm not entirely sure what they want to do with Europe, to be exact, because they again, what they say is completely contradictory. At the one hand, they talk about the Europe of regions. At the other point, they talk about the Federal Republic of Europe, which means they literally want Europe being one country. And not only Europe, they have like a concept paper where they talk about what they want to do with Europe, and I skipped through this a little bit, and I've read this sentence once that every country in the world should be able to join the Federal Republic of Europe.
Oh my God!
You want to think about that statement for a second?
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I was afraid. I thought you were gonna say you joined that party. I was like, oh no.
Fuck no. This is the only party that ever blocked me on Twitter.
What?
Yeah, because turns out this scientific party that is all for open discussion and bullshit can't fucking handle it if you criticize their ideas and point out where they contradict themselves.
Wow.
Sounds like an American liberal. Or a national socialist. I can't tell the difference sometimes.
Yeah, again, their allegiances are definitely on the left side of the political spectrum as far as parties go, but they are not really dogmatic in the sense that, for example, the Democratic Socialists or something like this is just it feels a little bit like this might be the first party on the planet that consists exclusively of useful idiots. Usually we have like a handful of smart people on top who know what they're doing, who understand it, and then you have like 95% plus useful idiots on the bottom of the pyramid. and this might be the first party that is actually formed by useful idiots who
Just
have
top to
no idea how
bottom,
the
people who have
world
no
works.
fucking clue what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's exactly completely contradictory, wishful thinking. We all just good people, and we the government needs to do everything. Yeah, everything needs to be funded by the government. Everything. Art needs to be funded by the government. Schools definitely, of course, universal basic income, of course, all sorts of social insurances, etc., etc. And of course, the United Nations is completely ineffective, but at the same time needs more money.
Wait, that's actually their platform? Like,
yeah, basically. We need the United Nations. Yeah, again, you look at you look just a little bit through this stuff. You don't even read really much. You just skip pages and you already you read it for 5 minutes and you can already see that again completely contradictory. And this saying that at the same time you want a Europe of regions, but you also want a federal republic of Europe. So saying that by surrendering by giving a fucking European Parliament that is, according to themselves, completely ineffective and corrupt, more power over my region, I actually get power back for my region. How the fuck is this supposed to work? If I own a house and I sell this house to someone and stay in my house, but I don't own it anymore, and I pay rent to the guy I sold it to, I don't have more power over my house. That's not how this works.
No, that's not how any of this works.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like they might literally be like, have you ever heard of like the New Age spiritual people?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about that because, I think I know a couple people who would sign right up for that party if they lived in Germany.
Yeah, there's a German skeptic talked about this party once. Said, yeah, this is definitely I'm definitely this was last election a year ago, and he said, yeah, I'm definitely going to vote for this party, which is completely useless because this party is never going to make it, only 5%, and you need 5% to get into parliament, which means he wasted his vote. But whatever. This guy is, of course, skeptic, Richard Dawkins fanboy, hardcore anti-theist. Anti-theist NPC, by the way.
Can't tell you why he doesn't like church, but he hates it.
Huh?
Can't tell you why he hates the church, but he hates it.
Well, no, I had a discussion with him about in his comment section once about why I don't like Richard Dawkins and why I think that The God Delusion is a horrible book that does atheism a disservice. And yeah, like the typical NPC talking points, the typical anti-theist NPC talking. Well, if atheism is a religion, then not collecting stamps is a hobby. Okay. First of all, yeah, just not collecting stamps is not a hobby. You're right, but not collecting stamps. Having a YouTube channel where you talk about how the fact that you don't collect stamps makes you better than people who do collect stamps. Writing a fucking book about it called The Stamp Delusion, getting a specific sign, like the atheist pentagram, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Which how the fuck did no one figure out that maybe using something that looks like a pentagram is not the best thing?
Not a good marketing, not a good PR stunt.
Yeah. And you get this tattooed on your body, and you go to non-stamp collectors conferences. Yeah, at this point, it's kind of a hobby.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a hobby at that point. Yeah, I anything reductive like that is always coming from somebody who is either not wanting to engage in the conversation or just doesn't have a full grasp of it. It's like, how could you even reduce your entirety like to that? Like, oh well, I don't. It's something I participate in is not a religion because it's explicitly against other religions. It's like, at some point you don't understand what you're even criticizing.
Yeah, it is specifically you promoting a worldview that says if you have a different religious belief that I have, then you are a bad person. How is this not a religion? It doesn't need a god to be a religion.
No, it doesn't need. I mean, fuck, you don't need much to act like a bunch of assholes. I mean, you pretty much just need an in-group and an ideology. That's it.
Yeah. Anyway, this guy voted for this party, and he voted for this party specifically for the reason that it is that it is marketed towards atheists and atheism, and it is anti-religious. And yeah, again, when I talked briefly about him to him about this party, and I like told him a few things that actually are in their program, he basically said, yeah, I kind of the fact that it's an atheist party kind of blinded me a little bit to my bias went towards them. He just basically ignored all this bullshit simply because it's an atheist party, and as we all know, atheists don't ever do evil shit.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, because it's like when a movement pops up that you feel like is kind of aligned with the way that you see the world. It's really easy to get lost in the ether and get very, excited about stuff and sensational about things. But it's like, I'm going to go from like another perspective of let's see. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, whenever your emotions are kind of like the driving force of in your life, that's like very dangerous territory, because you can get lost in all this stuff. So it sounds like, this guy you're describing probably got really excited about this movement, and he was just like all in. And that's kind of dangerous. You don't want to just join a tribe blindly like that, because it descends into that. So, and
circle jerking echo chambers.
Yeah, and we can see that going on, I think, when it comes when we're just looking at, I mean, from my perspective of the Twitter sphere and political discourse, you've got these different camps. You've got like the forever Trumpers, the never Trumpers, and then like other people just trying to navigate what's going on and figure it out for themselves in an honest way, I guess, with intellectual integrity. So I think it's good to support that. I definitely like the way that Tommy and Boone are very willing to challenge other people who have like misguided views. I think that's important. So it's very cool.
Yeah, I'll talk to anybody, and that's my whole thing, is like, the only aspect that I really, really hate about anybody's ideology or anybody's anything is the need to censor and the need to shut people out. I hate that. And that's what started me on partially on, the path that I'm on, and started me even really getting into politics. And it's crazy because I thought, and you learn something new every day, and you learn about the world every day if you're living in it. And I really did think that the majority of the people who want to censor you are on the quote unquote left, but you go far enough right, they don't want to hear it either. So it's something that I think is important to unite people, and you just come together and talk it out. I don't care if you're a communist, I don't care if you're a Nazi, I don't care if you're a space alien who wants to obliterate everybody on this planet.
Hell, I don't care if it's Corinne, anybody.
I'll talk to. Well, see, the thing about talking to Corinne is it's difficult. It's like talking to a brick wall. That's Tommy, almost like there's like a feat.
We need to show you that stream, Tommy. We talked with this live streamer named Corinne. I'll send you a link. Okay. It's hilarious. But anyway. Yeah. But like that's basically. I mean, that's why I love freedom of speech. That's what it's all about. It's coming together, giving people an opportunity to exchange ideas and thoughts. I mean, the Greeks were definitely onto something, when talking about, the Acropolis, whatever, where people come together and they talk. Right. Yeah. And, that's what I see social media is. That's what I thought Twitter and, Facebook and YouTube were, but it's like, seems like certain people don't want that, and that's what really pisses me off. I mean, for instance, in my perspective of being somebody with like physical limitations, it's a lot easier for me to interact with the world through social media. It's like instantaneous. And so, yeah, just the fact that people want to take that away, that really just pisses me off.
Yeah, and it's funny to me that a lot of people on the left nowadays are totally okay with censorship as long as it's not the government doing it. And it's like, to a certain extent, they are using principles that I agree with in a negative way, because they like everybody who is trying to use language against you. They are dropping the nuance. They are dropping the details. They are just trying to paint in broad strokes. You know, they aren't willing to say, sure, at some point it is necessary to allow a private group of people or corporation to make choices about how they operate their business. I'd say that's even tantamount to like having a good structure. But that's not the same point as saying giant, massive tech monopolies can abuse people on an ideological basis. Those things are different. You can't say it's totally their right to ideologically censor anybody they want because they're private. This is not your mom and shop's teddy bear shop. These are giant tech corporations, and the important point, the important nuance that they leave out is that these companies encompass the majority of modern day human communication. And it is not a matter of disallowing these poor business owners. You know, this is so far removed from the concept they're trying to use to justify corporate censorship that it makes me sick to my stomach. And I think it's important to say, look, no, you can't ideologically censor people, especially if you are running a company that is responsible for a large amount of human communications. I mean, we understood this about like telephone companies and even about the printing people before the internet came along. Like, you can't take somebody's ability to talk on the phone away because you don't like that they voted for Donald Trump and you don't like that they said the N-word a million times or whatever. Like, you can't disallow them to have a phone because you're taking away their right to actually express themselves and speak to others. It's the same concept in my book, and I hate the way the left tries to hide behind concepts they don't even fucking agree with. You know what I mean? They don't even want small companies to be able to choose who they get to serve. They want a small Christian bakery to bake a gay cake. They want, you know what I mean? They don't even like the concept they're trying to hide behind. It's totally fucked.
Yeah, this is the typical left-wing double standard. In Germany, you had a few isolated cases the last years that of people who refuse to serve foreigners, migrants, specific kinds of foreigners. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Because of personal experience from these people who said, yeah, these people, they make trouble and we don't serve people who make trouble. And then you have this social justice warrior outrage going along. Yeah, we need to sue people and sign petitions no one gives a shit about. The very same people cheer for businesses who refuse service to AfD members or AfD voters. There's no principle. There's no I'm on principle for or against people having to serve everyone. I'm for people having to serve whoever I want and against people having to serve whoever I want. This is their principle. I need to be right all the time. What I do is right.
Very very authoritarian, imperialistic sort of view of things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. See, that would be interesting to sort of like further study. Why is it that people get swayed to such extreme sides of things so quickly? Hell, maybe it's because the media has kind of been conditioning us. I mean, think about it. For the past 3 years, especially in the American media, it's just this super sensationalistic, basically porn, I would say, that's just doping people's brains up like you couldn't believe. You know, there definitely are social scientists that work with these media corporations, and it's like maybe that has something to do with it. But you know, I'd really like to figure that out. Maybe that's just kind of a part of human nature. I don't know.
It is not that complicated to indoctrinate someone if you know what you're doing. And these companies, these are multi-billion-dollar companies and governments behind them. These people know what they're doing.
Yeah, they know what they're doing, and it can be from a smaller scale too. I mean, Boone and I almost got indoctrinated by Groypers, which we thought were Pepe the Frog characters, but they weren't.
Well, it's the crypto nature of that I don't understand. It's like, and I don't think it's hashtag not all Groypers.
Not all Groypers.
I think but I think there's like, I think that's part of what I overheard the other day. Some far right, like National Socialist people talking about like Twitter ops, and I'm pretty sure that those Twitter ops are just like Groypers, are like trying to like, because I think what they do is they get people who are on the right, who are maybe have some ideas that they agree with, even on like a racial level, but aren't total like all the way fascist. And they get them into these, they get them into this like this Twitter circle, and they take it to the fascist level really quick. Like once they get to know you, and it's like I think it's pretty obvious what they're doing. It's like they think they're like super cool and like sneaky, but really they're just, you know,
retards.
They're just people who can't propagate their ideology through argument, so they have to be really creative about getting people to agree with them and on their side, and they have to be shitty and use these little tactics that, you know, that 7-year-olds use on the on the playground to mess with other 7-year-olds.
Yeah, and let's brush Tommy up like about Groypers. If I understand what Groypers are correctly, they're basically, I thought they were these personalized like Pepe the Frogs, but then I was like looking up and they're like, no, Groypers are toads, and I was like, oh fuck, oh no, what does that mean? So I started looking into it, and I think it's I'm not sure if it's all Groypers, but I think the theme is there are people on the right that are kind of fascistic. I mean, that's what was explained to me. So
okay, I have never heard anything about this.
Well, it's, you know, it's a lovely thing that you would know about if you were on Twitter. Actually, you know what? It's a service that you don't know about this stuff. All this shit that's on Twitter can kind of be a waste of time.
Again, I can only recommend getting off Twitter.
Yeah, I'm the one.
It really does wonders for your mental health.
Yeah, no, it definitely would do wonders for that. You know, this is something that I say to my friends. Some of my friends, I go, this is very bad life advice, but you should get a Twitter. It's really fun.
It's like, hey, you know what's really fun? You should try those pain pills out.
Yeah, try something. Smoke some crack. You want to smoke this crack with me right now?
No, it's not nearly as severe as that. No, and like, I have a Twitter. It's just, you know, it's all about how you use it, and like.
Well, to each his own. Everybody has their own limits and stuff like that, and you got to do what's best for you, you know.
Yeah. Bottom line, though, when it comes to corporate censorship in the modern sense, when it comes to deplatforming people off of like monetary sites and e-commerce and these platforms to get your voice out, it's just, and especially when it comes to the actual enforcement of this on an ideological or political level, it's really crazy to me that the left has done such a about face on this, of all things. They've done about faces on a lot of things, but this seems like something that they would have kept, because anti-corporate greed, anti-corporate abuse was like a big part of their platform not that long ago. And then they're turning around and they're turning around on a lot of things, but I think like this specifically would wake a lot of people up who are in this ideology, because it's like, at what point do you realize that you're actually on the side of the giant mega corporation abusing people who just want to have their voice heard? You know what I mean? Like, at what point do you realize that you're the bad guy?
Yeah. This is something hard to come to terms with, being finally realizing that oneself is the bad guy. Yeah, back when the left was anti censorship and anti corporate censorship, this was when the left was on the other end of the gun. Basically, this is when the left was being censored and the corporations were more right wing. Now that you have these multinational social media companies, which are all left wing as fuck. Now they are corrupted by power. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now the left is in charge, and now they show you who they really are.
Yeah.
And that they're really showing their true colors. And I can guarantee you that there's a huge possibility that these companies have been helping China construct their dystopian social credit sort of a network and system. And that's the crux of where we're at. It's like, look at China. Like, you tell people, do you want to live like that? I think a lot of people, a lot of like, normies would think it's like a good idea, but it's like, that's just terrifying. I mean, I've watched a few documentaries, and I think we've talked about this before, but it's like, if your credit score goes too low over there, they're like, well, you can't buy plane tickets anymore. Oh yeah, that fast rail track that you wanted to take to go see your family? Now you can just take a bus, and it's going to take you 10 hours instead of 4 hours. That's like terrifying. Just the fact that a government can micromanage its citizens' lives like that. And, that's where we're going to be headed if we're not careful.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's where every authoritarian nation's heading, especially in the tech age. Like, we're at a spot where, like, we've had bad, abusive governments in the past, even in the recent past, but we haven't had anything Soviet level. I mean, China's bad, but it's not Soviet level bad. I guess I say that, but I don't live there. I guess it's probably equally as bad if you live there.
You might not hear about some of the things they're doing.
Exactly, yeah, and then you can't really trust everything you know about China anyway, because it's such a closed system. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, I'm just trying to make the point that tyranny can be really bad in the modern age. Like the sort of dystopian levels that of control that technology gives.
It's like there's so many
over other people.
Multifaceted, sorry, with all the different things that we have. But yeah,
and it's technological, and the sheer level of control that technology has over our lives means that a government that seizes that could have all of the control. You know what I mean? All of it. If utilized correctly, technology can be totally dangerous to to people who are not wanting to live under authoritarianism.
Right. And so, that's kind of the debate that's going on. I mean, it seems like there's a little bit of that in Europe. It's not quite as extreme. It might just like, boil down to like European countries saying, oh, you can't go to this website or that website. I don't know. Yeah. I wonder which country in Europe is the worst when it comes to being, similar to China.
Probably UK, sadly.
Yeah, probably the UK now, but I think it's Germany probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. Like, even, like what, we've got one viewer watching this right now. We don't have a huge audience, so I don't take myself like super seriously. But like, even like I had an event like last, a few days ago where every time I was trying to log into my Google account, I wasn't getting a notification for the 2-step verification. And even me, I was like, what the, like, does this have anything to do with like stuff I've said on the internet, And it's like, it's weird. It sounds paranoid, but it's getting to a point where it's like, you never know. Like, I mean, I wouldn't
even if it wasn't that, I mean, just the fact that that could happen on a technological level, like it's physically possible for that to be an option for the government. Like, if it got to that point where the government was just like openly authoritarian, was like, no, like, you're not allowed to use Gmail because your opinions are wrong.
Well, yeah, and that's what freaked me out. Like, I finally got back in and just turned that off, but it freaked, or the 2-step thing. But the thing that freaked me out is I was like, it just dawned on me. I was like, I can't even get into Hangouts. I can't go on my page. I can't do shit. Like, I was contemplating creating a new, like, whole new Gmail account, but I got it to work finally. So, yeah, but I mean, it's scary.
Yeah, it didn't. I think YouTube deleted Jordan Peterson's account a while
Oh,
back. Yeah, they
yeah.
reinstated it pretty fast because they realized that the backlash is just still too much. They need to wait a few more years.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like they're just, stress testing, like, what can we get away with? What can we get away with? And when they get away with something, they go, all right, and, part of me, I never really seen like all this on a mass scale. Like, for instance, when Alex Jones got deplatformed, my first thought was like, all right, they got rid of Alex. Like, I get why they hate him. It'll probably stop there. Nope. Nope. Not at all. We've been seeing all this stuff going on with Patreon. In fact, Sam Harris recently left Patreon, which is kind of interesting. So, we're having these crazy debates. In fact, Styx was talking about the Subscribe Star app. Is that what it was called? The new yeah. Well, PayPal recently, they deplatformed them basically. Like PayPal said they weren't gonna, facilitate any of their payments, and then. Yeah, so it's just interesting what's going on. Eventually, I think Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin, I heard, are working on some sort of a pay type of a platform. I don't know if it's going to do anything.
Yeah, they work on a Patreon alternative.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the big deal is we're going to have to figure that out because it seems like every time something grows, PayPal gets pressure to just cut them off.
Well, as long as alternatives are in place, I think we're in good shape. Because ultimately, as long as there's places for people to go and platforms to do well, in the absence of platforms that are abusing or that are not abusing their people, when everybody's either abusive or you don't have a platform, then your platform is going to die if there's other people allowed to compete with you. That's the beauty of competition.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a sad state that we're in with people who are crying for censorship and not really knowing why and what the implications are. And these are supposedly also like the liberal hippie people who are calling for this, and they call their opponents Nazis, but they're the ones who want to crack down on people's ability to operate based on their ideology. It's just crazy.
Multiple personalities by too many psychedelics.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
That and it's just like so not. It's the self-awareness is just not there.
Yeah, and that's the key. That's what not that I'm going to call these people narcissists, but narcissism it's definitely on the rise. With social media, all these different things, and people who are narcissistic are not necessarily self-aware. So we need to get people self-aware and encourage them to not just go with the flow of things.
Yes, I agree with that.
So totalitarianism is bad, censorship is bad, Donald Trump is good.
Those are your NPC talking points, everybody. Go ahead.
I'm gonna become a full-on based boomer, bros.
Hey man, you just got to get yourself some boomer juice and you're good to go.
Yeah. What were you saying, Tommy? You were saying something?
Yeah, I want to say Hillary Clinton is evil, but whatever.
Oh, you think she's evil, dude? We can't be friends, man. I love Hillary Clinton. She's good.
I reserve the term evil for you. This is not a word that comes out easily, but yeah, Hillary Clinton is one of the handful of people on the planet that I have absolutely no doubt are evil.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sure. No, it's not even ironic. She's straight up evil.
Yep.
So should we wrap it up on that note, boys? Or do we have
yeah. That's a solid note. Hillary Clinton's evil.
All right. Well, thank you to whoever is listening. We will see you guys next week.
Yep. Peace out.
shout. With a white. Only time when she yell. That ain't right. Ripped jeans, big screens, bad bitch, and she 18. She could be my lady. You could be my lady. Hate me, everybody hate me. Every day I wake up, everything aching. You ain't got no loyalty, then I got no respect. You ain't got no loyalty, then I got no respect. I got no respect. You ain't got no loyalty, then I got no respect. Everybody know I'm next. Got these bitches sending texts, cause they know I'm up next. Now I'm on the jet, I'm taking bets. What do you expect? What do you expect? baby? What did you expect me to do for you? What do you think I have to offer you? It's cold outside tonight. I don't got a roof over my head. It's cold outside tonight. I remember when we shared that same apartment. I loved it. Now I'm holding grudges. Fuck it, I don't care no more. I don't care. Not enough at all. Ripped jeans, big screens, bad bitch, and she 18. She could be my lady, you could be my lady. Hate me, everybody hate me. Every day I wake up, everything aching. You ain't got no loyalty, then I got no respect. You ain't got no loyalty, then I got no respect. I got no respect. Everybody know I'm next. Got these bitches sending texts. I got no respect. I got no respect, baby. I got no respect for you. I got no respect. What did you expect? What did you expect? Everybody hate me. Everything